Hello, hello, hello. My name is Tom Nightingale. I'm the marketing manager at the Churchill Trust. Thank you for joining us for this evening's webinar. This is an arts and trades information session about Churchill Fellowships. We'll give it a moment or so just for people to come in and join. If you'd like to, you can pop maybe where you're joining us from in the chat. It's always nice to see where people are joining from. Sometimes within Australia, sometimes outside Australia, but feel free to pop that in the chat. We'll get started in a moment or two. Okay, I can see a comment that chat's disabled. It looks like we might be able to get it up and running. So as I mentioned, my name's Tom Nightingale. I'm with the Churchill Trust, which administers Churchill Fellowships. A little bit of information before we get started with the substance of tonight. The session is being recorded. It'll be shared with people who have registered after the session. And if you'd like to, you can share it around with others who you might know professionally or personally. The format for tonight, we're going to hear from Christine Dacey, who's the CEO of the Trust, with some information that goes to what Churchill Fellowships are and who they apply to and what you can really do with them. And then we're going to show you today what's possible with a fellowship with two speakers who we're really lucky to have. Two very different stories, but two stories that really kind of illustrate what a Churchill Fellowship is all about. We do have the chat set up, so you will be welcome to ask questions in the chat at any time. And we have time for answering those after our speakers as best we can with the time we have and with questions that kind of, can apply to yourself, but others as well. So pop those in the chat if you like. We also do have FAQs on the Churchill Trust website. We'll place a link in the chat shortly. Those questions have come from these sessions in other years, so they're questions that people have commonly had. So we have some answers ready to go, and you feel free to check the Trust website yourself if you'd like to. What I'll do is I'll hand over to Christine Dacey now. So Christine has joined the Churchill Trust just before Christmas in 2024, so a few months ago. This was following decades where she worked as a senior public servant in the Commonwealth government. She worked in aviation, she worked in infrastructure, immigration, education, youth affairs, superannuation. So Christine, if you're able to join us, we'll get started with your presentation.
Hi, thanks Tom, and warm welcome to everyone who's online. As Tom said, my name's Christine Dacey, and I just started a few months ago at the Churchill Trust as a CEO, and today I'm coming to you from Canberra, which is Ngunnawal and Ngambri country. I would like to start by acknowledging Australia's First Nations people, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today and let you know that the Trust is committed to a strong First Nations participation in fellowships. As Tom said to you, fundamentally this session is about giving you background and information. So please feel free to ask questions. And don't worry if you don't think about all of the questions you might have today. We have other online sessions and FAQs Tom talked about. We tend to find that questions fall into kind of two broad buckets. One, which are questions that might be of interest to everyone, and some might be quite specific to you. We will try and address the ones that we think are of the broadest possible interest in this session, and maybe some of the more individualised ones you might have a look at the FAQs and then get in contact with us if you need more information. So without wanting to keep you too much, we'll get going with our very short presentation. I promise you it won't go long. So you might ask, what's all this about? And obviously it's about granting Churchill Fellowships. Sir Winston has an extraordinary legacy which has led to the Churchill Fellowships, and as a leader, he deeply believed in the power of public service and the capacity of all individuals to create change. When he passed away in 1965, which was 60 years ago, there was a huge national fundraising campaign in Australia to honour him through the creation of a living legacy. The result of that was one of the largest public fundraising efforts in our history, where we raised over £2 million, so much so that the banks had to stay open on a Sunday. And today that extraordinary generosity continues to support Churchill Fellows, enabling them to travel the world and bring back ideas that benefit Australia. So what is a Churchill Fellowship? It's a unique, prestigious and life-changing opportunity, which is open to all Australians or permanent residents from all backgrounds. You do not require an academic scholarship. You do not require any particular tertiary qualifications. It is about your vision and contribution. Fellows travel for about 4 to 8 weeks overseas to learn new skills, observe best practices and build networks that benefit their industry or community back in Australia. Topics are really wide and broad. There aren't any limits, and each fellowship is tailored to your individual passion and purpose. It also offers you an important opportunity when you come back to become part of the incredible alumni network of fellows who continue to amaze us with the vast array of amazing things they could do. And we would love it if you would become part of that alumni, should you be lucky enough to be chosen. The Trust is rightfully very proud to have given 4,800 Australians this opportunity in our last 60 years. Down to the nuts and bolts. How do you go about applying for a fellowship? To be eligible to apply, you have to be an Australian citizen or permanent resident who is 18 or over. And to be clear, there are no upper age limits. I would say to you, if you have a disability or live remotely, we offer additional travel support, including virtual and hybrid options or domestic travel in specific circumstances. And there's more information about all of those topics on our website. In terms of the projects, a fellowship is an individual project, it's not a team project. But we do welcome joint applications between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians if the project is focused on First Nations issues. Your project has to be self-contained, has to benefit the Australian community, and as part of applying, you have to demonstrate to us that the topic has been fully explored within Australia first. I'll say it again, this is not just a trip overseas. It's an investment in you, your expertise, and your ability to make an impact. A couple of tips and tricks as you're thinking about forming up your application. Just remember, it's competitive. So make the most compelling argument that you can to make it stand out. Some of the things that the selection panels are looking for is, why is this project important now? Who does it help and how does it help them? Be reasonable and sensible about what you're putting forward as your itinerary. We want a clear, achievable travel plan with specific destinations and purposes attached to it. So really, give that a fair bit of thought. And tell us a bit about you and what makes you the right person to deliver this idea. When writing your application, do try and avoid jargon because it can just distract from your key messages. We are going to do some Q&As later in the session, as Tom indicated, but we get 3 really common questions, so we thought we'd just tackle them head on. How much is a fellowship worth? And the answer is the amount of money depends on where you're going, what you're looking to do. So each fellowship is tailored individually, and we will give you and we will work with people to help estimate those costs. What does the fellowship cover? It's a fully funded trip and it covers all travel, accommodation, meals and other fees approved in your application. So those are important things to know. And last but not least, and I've said it before already, but I'll say it again, do I need a qualification? And the answer is no. Anyone who's got a good idea can put forward an application. Applications open on the 28th of February and close on the 1st of May. Our team is here to help you. So by all means, call us or send us an email, read our FAQs if you think we can help. I'll end up by just giving you a Churchill quote. To each, there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered a chance to do a very special thing unique to their talents. What a tragedy if in that moment they are unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. We really hope that this information session might be your tap on the shoulder. I'll say good luck and thank you, and hand back to Tom.
Thank you, Christine. Before our next speaker, I just want to let the group know, and we have a wonderful number of people coming along today. Actually, we've got well over 100 people, which is fabulous. I wanted to let you know about some sponsored fellowships. Now, these are kind of available for specific topics or kind of areas. So, as an example, there's one that's relevant for some in this group. It's called the Ian Medgett Churchill Fellowship. Now, he was a well-renowned scientist and a highly talented musician. He died as the result of a quite tragic accident in the USA, and there was a trust set up by his mother to fund this particular fellowship over the years, and then there were further funds donated when his mother died. That fellowship is for projects featuring classical strings or classical voice. So you'll be able to find more information about it specifically on our website. But that's just one sponsored fellowship. We have others, including others relating to arts and trades. So I'd encourage you to have a look on the Churchill Trust website. There's a section specifically around sponsored fellowships as a way of just encouraging you to find out more about what's available. But it is time to hear from the first of our Churchill Fellows, which is terrific. So I want to introduce to you Deb Wace. Now, Deb is a fabric designer, ecological activist, plant advocate, and a printmaker who's based in Hobart. She was part of a campaign to protect the northeast peninsula of Research Bay from logging in the early 2000s using her artwork. Now, if you went back in time quite a way, then back in the 1790s, it was the French D'Entrecasteaux expedition that kind of documented a lot of that landscape, collected scientific expeditions. And where this all fits together is that Deb's 2018 fellowship meant that she went to Europe to study those botanical records of that expedition and other French expeditions to Tassie. But look, Deb, you can tell it far better than I can. So yeah, take it away. I'd love you to share your story with the group.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much. And I am really looking forward to speaking with you all. And thanks very much for the Churchill Trust and their support that they've given me over the years. So I'm Deborah Wace. I'm a fabric designer and botanical printmaker from Tasmania. And in 2018, I undertook a Churchill Fellowship to develop ideas and artwork for fabric design from European botanical collections that were from the French expeditions to Tasmania that are held in herbarium collections in Europe. And from that, to bring back new ideas for design to Australia. Now, I've got to say that I had come from living in remote, far southern Tasmania, and I'd never applied for anything like this before. I'd never given a presentation before, like a PowerPoint presentation. You know, I'm a performer and I'm an artist, so I have a performative way about me. But I'd done my degree at art school, but I'm not an academic. Yeah, so I was hugely passionate to study this work overseas, and I think that's the main element that you need to bring. A really good idea and the passion and the curiosity to follow it through. So, you know, I wanted to talk to people today about having confidence in yourself to do this thing, because where you start from at the moment it's a bit unknowable, and you're approaching this august institution, and you're looking to go overseas and apply and approach these people that, you know, I was there going, oh my God, am I going to write this email and then I'm going to press send? And everything was heightened about it. But I must say that in the application process, what I found was it was enormously clarifying of my topic. Writing my application was synthesizing of my idea and really, really excellent for what I was about to study. And so I wrote and wrote, and I honed it down, and I honed it into talking points, so that when I did get a interview, you know, I was ready as ready for what I was going to do. So the application process is a bit different now than when I applied in 2017. But, you know, what I found was a very ready and willing ear in the Churchill Trust, and very supportive of every aspect of the process. So please feel encouraged that there's no question that's too small to approach the Churchill Trust about. They want you to apply, and they're wanting you to pull this thread of the best idea out of your brain, because only you can do it. And you're applying to do something that you can't find the information here in Australia. You're going overseas to find that and bringing this back home. So that's one thing that I have really taken on board. And in my advocacy role for threatened species and for Tasmanian and Australian flora and the historical cultural narrative, weaving that together, I've worked in many ways to do that. I took a filmmaker with me when I went over, but you don't need to. Things have changed now. You know, you can take a little gimbal machine or your phone, and there are so many ways that you can bring your final report about. So, you know, when I applied, I'd never traveled overseas as an adult. I'd never had the money to do so because I lived so remotely. So it was just this huge leap in the dark. I had a lot of knowledge and experience, but I had never really had that confidence to take that leap. And in the doing of it, in the actual doing of it, I found enormous wellsprings of confidence and capacity and chutzpah to do the work necessary. And from that came a lot of really excellent contacts. And I want you to think about the worthiness of your idea. You know, only you can do what you're talking about doing. Only you will know where you might find those threads of connection internationally that will benefit your study and help you bring back the knowledge to contribute to Australia and be part of the over 4,500 Churchill Fellows who have deepened the cultural, the narrative that is part of our Australian culture, the knowledge of medicine, of history of the arts and trades like we're doing. Like it's quite incredible. The kudos that the Churchill Trust brings also is quite remarkable. It opens doors. Doors will open. You may think, why would anyone even open my email? Because they don't know me from any other person. But how you word that email and the fact that the Churchill Trust has put their trust in you, it opens doors. It's quite magical. So, you know, give it a go. And the clarifying process is very, very interesting. It really does develop your confidence. The courage needed is necessary to get over that imposter syndrome. But that was my thing anyway. And I soon realized that that's just, you know, it's ingrained, especially in women. Just, you know, am I worthy of this? Yeah, you're worthy of this because you have the gumption to take it further. So I had, you know, I presented a paper at the World Museum in Liverpool to heads of British institutions, and I'd never given a PowerPoint before. I sang to them songs about the early French naturalists. I showed them my fabric range. They were fascinated. They loved it. And I said to them, you know, if you are ever able to support people living at the end of the earth who are fighting to protect these sites that are represented in your collections, please help us, because, you know, some of us have to fight our own government to protect these places. So what it's done for me in my process has been enormous in, you know, developing my skills and my capacity to use film and presentations to develop the advocacy role that is held within my fabric design, my teaching. I'm now part of, you know, international business, women's business networks. I have a speaker's role. My creative arts practice has now grown hugely. I've developed a pitch deck, strategic plans, you know, gone for the new work for new markets, export market development grants, fashion festivals, and printmaking classes. Worked with, especially with IMAS around seaweed, threatened seaweed. So using art and fabric design, using my herbarium collections to really speak about the that nexus between culture, history, narrative, present day advocacy for threatened species, and the delight of Australian flora and its relevance into the international conversation. I've also done a lot of radio interviews. I did some interviews in Australia when I was on my Churchill Fellowship, and I think it's really great because you can then talk about what the fellowship meant for you, you know, where you went. People are very interested in the Churchill Trust and the Churchill Fellowship. So, you know, I might be so that presentation I gave at the World Museum, I got straight on to the ABC, local ABC in Hobart, and talked with Rick Goddard for half an hour. I was just so pumped. I was so relieved and excited. It was enormous. And that feeling never leaves. You know, you do this work, you do that travel, and you bring home this knowledge, and it may go sideways into other expressions that you hadn't anticipated. But I know that I felt both the moral responsibility to give it my red hot go, but also a real genuine connection into this field of scholarship nationwide and worldwide. So what I would say is write and write and write, clarify or even speak and transpose it, you know, clarify your idea, get it into some great dot points that you can speak to, and boil it down like a good stock, you know, like a good stock. It's got to be concentrated. And give it a good go, because even if you apply and you don't win this round, actually it's the clarification process that is the most important, because you may win the second round, you may go on to do something else, but the development of this idea as a germ of excellence in yourself, it's a wonderful situation to be in. So I really encourage you all to apply, and there are many ways to write a report. There are many ways to do your fellowship. There are many places you can go, and the people you will meet. So yeah, thanks very much for having a look. You can check out my report online. You can see the film, The Fabric of Botany, on my website. So along with many other films. So yeah, you know, there's many ways to showcase the work that you're going to do. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, Deb. And look, before you go, we've got a couple of comments in the chat asking where people can find your work. So what is that website that you just mentioned? What's the address? Oh, you're muted, Deb, sorry. Maybe we'll pop that in the chat. But look,
sorry, Tom, it's deborahwace.com, DEBORAHWACE.com. And there's a film and stories page. And on there you can see many short form films, and films have become something that arose from the Churchill Fellowship. So, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. We are about to hear from our next featured speaker, but just before I do, I misspoke earlier. We want questions in the Q&A rather than the chat. So if you can put them in the Q&A section, that would be great. I can see a comment to the effect that my microphone is fuzzy. Sorry about that. Not sure what's going on there. Next up, we have Dan Graham. Dan is a theatre director who's worked with Opera Australia, Bell Shakespeare and others. He's passionate about neurodiversity within the performing arts. In 2022, he was awarded the Gilbert Spottiswoode Churchill Fellowship to study greater opportunities in performing arts for people with neurodiversity. That's another one of the sponsored fellowships which we mentioned earlier. But Dan, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Tom, and hello everyone, and thanks for joining both of us this evening.
Dan, maybe to kick things off, can you kind of take us back to before you kind of applied for the Churchill Fellowship and that kind of thing, but
Yep.
Where were you at in your journey and what was it that kind of first made you aware of the opportunity and then prompted you to actually take the step and apply?
Certainly. First of all, I would say I'm coming from Gadigal country here in Sydney, and so welcome everyone, and I pay acknowledgement to Indigenous leaders, past, present, and emerging. So if we can just say that at the start. And I would have to say, Tom, what got me started and on this journey in terms of a Churchill Fellowship is that I basically, how do we say this? I come from a lived experience of neurodiversity. Can you hear me okay, Tom? Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. So lived experience of neurodiversity. I'm neurodivergent myself. And I'm also a professional as well as trained theatre director. And it was very important that I had seen pre-Churchill, there were a number of individuals, and I always make a comment, if Churchill or not, there are a number of people in the industry, some that the public would even know, and I'm not going to name people in this context, who are neurodivergent, who basically have come to me, knowing that with the work that I've done pre-Churchill, to say they haven't felt safe. And it's been very important to actually try to, I won't say I represent a neurodivergent community because I can only speak from my own lived experience, but it is very interesting that basically the performing arts, like many industries, are talking about diversity, but unfortunately those with a disability and or neurodiversity are often overlooked. And I literally was trying to find a way that I could take the work that I do. Like I've spoken numerous conferences nationally and internationally, pre-Churchill. I've been on numerous boards and work in this space. But it was actually a friend of mine suggesting to me that I look at a Churchill Trust and see if it could align with my ethos, my beliefs, etc. And it certainly did. And it was very important that and I'm not saying that a person has to have lived experience of the particular project they put across, but it was very much helpful for me, and it's something that was just mentioned previously, to put down basically what I was wanting to achieve and still want to achieve post-Churchill Fellowship. E.g., I've actually got, not related to the Churchill directly, but I actually have a book being published by a London publisher later on this year on this very area of neurodiversity in the performing arts. And it was very interesting to see like how the industry can basically maybe acknowledge, is a polite way to put it. You know, there are many other individuals who are neurodivergent. And I would just put this in context, Tom, and let you ask me the following questions. And that is, only this past week, there have been 4 well-known individuals, and I'm talking publicly now, I'm not talking to me individually, but 4 individuals in the performing arts who I know have come out publicly as being neurodivergent. And when I was starting, even pre-Churchill, I was often introduced, this is Dan Graham, neurodivergent director. And you would hope that over time and with the platform that I've had with the Churchill Trust, to actually show that it's not just Dan and not just those individuals who have come out, as I call it, but it's just, yeah.
Thank you, Dan. And just by way of explanation to everyone. The microphone was hopefully better now, but was certainly bad earlier at my end. I'm told that that's actually storm related in Canberra. We've had really bad storms here this afternoon, so apparently it's at a level that's causing that kind of problem. So sorry, everyone, and I hope it's better now. Oh, wonderful. That's, yeah, got a comment to say that it's better, so that's good. Okay, look, Dan, you've actually you've answered some of the questions we had, but no, that's good. That's good. What I suppose I wanted to ask you next was what would you kind of say to someone who's come along tonight and is considering whether or not this is for them? What would you want them to walk away from this knowing and understanding about your experience?
I would have to say one thing that did concern me, and it's ironically what a lot of my Churchill report is on, and that is, and I'm addressing this to individuals with a disability, lived experience of a disability or neurodiversity, or that whole grouping, let's just say, that literally the Churchill Trust are there to help you. And when I say help you, that sounds a bit flippant, but I mean that literally they will provide as much support that is available and possible. And basically, I think literally what I have noticed, and I did notice even from the first dinner that we had when it was announced I was a fellow, that Churchill are trying to represent modern Australia. And I think that is as many, as obviously people with disabilities. And as I said, it's really quite funny that a lot of the work that I had done previously had been literally off my bat, if that makes sense, that literally reaching out to people and say, this is an area that needs to be discussed. And I'm not saying I've solved all the problems, and because my church was only just been put up just pre-Christmas, and again, mine's available to download, and I encourage people to read it. But I would say that basically, realise that basically, and it's something that was mentioned earlier, that whatever the project is that you've got to put forward is obviously something that you're passionate about. And if you can demonstrate, I'm not saying, again, I've got the answers, but I'm saying if you, the individual applicant, have got that passion, I would hope, and I feel it would transfer to the readers and assessors assessing your application. And I would hope that basically there would be a lot more people, as I said, with lived experience who literally aren't, I know this sounds a funny thing to say, but aren't daunted. Like, I have been previously overseas for my directing as well as my access work. And with my report, like, maybe this is my neurodiversity talking, and anyone who's watching this will probably smile when I say this, I did 30 plus interviews, and literally it was a gamut of literally from various drama schools and I should have said this early on, so apologies, Tom. My fellowship took me to the UK and the US. And I would hope that basically it shows that in terms of my report that I met with drama schools, I met with theatre companies and performing arts venues. And more importantly, or as important, if not more important to me, I actually interviewed or made contact with some I already knew. And again, I'm in contact with all those that I interviewed, those people with lived experience of neurodiversity who are professionals at performing arts. And it was very interesting that a lot of that I have maybe silently said to myself, I'm now gone on paper, if that makes sense. And I would hope that literally the report, or my report, shows that not just commitment, because I know it's something that has been discussed earlier this evening. Once you've done the Churchill, that is really only the start. And I'm even was with a friend of mine today, actually one of my referees, for my Churchill report. And I said I was doing this evening. And I said, my hope is now to have the platform of being now a Churchill Fellow to actually say, you've actually got a physical, I'm talking of theatre companies, whatever, a physical document to actually use this. It may not have all the answers, but I would hope it'd be a blueprint or a starting point for those, in especially what I am trying to address, that imbalance that has been there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dan. And for anyone who's in Adelaide or near Adelaide, or perhaps even just travelling to Adelaide for the festival coming up, Dan, I think you'll be there for the festival shortly, the Adelaide Festival. So. I
will, and I'm also there for, as I said, a Drama Australia conference where I've been asked to actually give a talk on the Churchill report. So that's going to be at Flinders University, and if I'm correct, the dates I think of there is between, I think it's the 7th and 8th of 9th. that's a neurodiverse moment here, on 9th of March. But as I said, and I will put here, I have got a website myself where people can contact me, which is all small letters, which is dangraham.com.au. And I have to update and put my report now on the website, but it gives people a bit more idea of my artistic practice and the work I do in this space.
Thank you so much, Dan. Now, we have got some really good questions coming through, very relevant questions. So we'll try and get through as many as we can in the time we have. Joining us for this particular section is Sally Campbell, who's the finance manager here at the Churchill Trust. Sally's with Christine on camera, you can see there. Now, Sally, I suspect this first one I might throw to you. How important is your previous professional experience relating to a topic compared to a deep personal interest? Where's the balance there?
Sure. Well, a fellowship is awarded to someone because of the project and because of the person. So you do have to demonstrate in your application and to the panel when you're interviewed why you are the best person to be awarded for that particular project. So it is important, and you will need to answer a lot of questions and put in some detail about that.
Thank you very much. Another question that I think will be quite relevant to people is how successful recipients juggle and co-manage their commitments in Australia while also travelling and focusing on a passion. That's something that I imagine probably every Churchill Fellow juggles. But what's kind of the advice to people who are considering this around that particular challenge? Because it is a challenge.
Sure. Well, we do suggest you talk to your workplace about the fact that you're thinking of applying, or if you get an interview, at what point you think is appropriate and why you think it's important, so that they're involved from the beginning. But it is something you will need to manage. Sometimes we have school teachers and they, for example, would like to do it over Christmas. So we've changed dates so that people can travel from November, so that they can do that and travel earlier. So it's really a matter of organisation and thinking about how you're going to do it and what sort of time frame will best suit you and the best time to go.
And also, Sally, and how you can continue to manage your time when you get back, because there's the report writing and the other end of it. So it's got to be a live issue in your head when you're trying to work out your life circumstances and how they might or might not fit with a fellowship opportunity.
Yeah.
The next question we have probably follows on from exactly that point, which is, the question is, if you apply and you are unsuccessful, is your application does it remain live for future rounds, or can you apply again the next round? And as a follow-on question, what feedback is provided to unsuccessful applicants?
Sure. So no, it doesn't remain live. You do need to reapply. We get about 1,000 applications a year and about 100 will be approved. So it's not really practical for us to provide feedback if you're not successful. There are some Q&A points on the website about people who are unsuccessful. It is very common for people to get through on their second or third round.
And another question we saw, Tom, along those lines was, are there specific selection criteria? And the answer to that is, because they're such individually tailored opportunities, we don't have sort of, those standard selection criteria, which is why I was really encouraging people to be, as compelling as they can be in pulling their case together about what's new and different and why, the topic is exhausted in Australia and you need to travel. So that's another answer for one of the questions we've seen.
And I suppose further to that, if someone's topic of interest has never been awarded a scholarship or a Churchill Fellowship before, what should people read into that? There's a question around whether someone should read into that simply no one's applied or been awarded, or that this topic is not of interest to the fellowship? I mean, is it possible for people to even see what's been applied before if it was unsuccessful?
You can't go on the website and look at unsuccessful applications. You can look at 60 years of successful applications. If a topic has not been applied for before, that doesn't mean that you can't apply for it now. I mean, we've had everything from people examining dinosaurs to person providing
A fellow was telling me the other day about a project for those defibrillator machines, you know, we've had everything.
Yeah, from agriculture to industry to arts like Deb and Dan. So by all means, go ahead and apply.
Thank you. We also have a couple of questions coming through around the fact that people have children and have dependent children, might be primary caregivers. So what advice can we give people who are in that position? Are people allowed to take children with them at their own expense? What are the other sort of things that people need to be considerate of when they're applying with that in mind?
So we do have fellows who will take their family. That's something that only a fellow can decide what is best. There's a lot more expense associated with that, and of course it is at their own cost. The Trust does provide dependence allowance if the primary breadwinner is the one travelling, and that affects the funds in the household remaining at home. That is on top of your fellowship allowance. And I point out that the average fellowship last year, 6.6 weeks, just over $35,000. And most fellows report that that allowance is very satisfactory. For your personal circumstances, it's really something that only you can decide.
And I guess, sorry, I would just, chime in, we're trying to make the fellowship opportunity available to as many of those 100 approximately each year. And so we are conscious about managing all of that in the most transparent way that we can. So.
And there's another really great question.
Deb looks like she wants to say something.
Oh yeah, Deb.
I just wanted to say that I've had several sessions with people up in my studios, my art studios, who are wanting to apply for the Churchill Fellowship, and they've just asked me if I can help give them a sense of it and help them understand what it is that I might that I can offer them, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's what many Churchill Fellows can do. They pay it forward for the next people and help them get a sense of what is necessary, what is how to get over that imposter syndrome, and what would be best to put in their application, what my actual interview was like, because my interview, I turned up a month early in a shambles, a hot, sweaty mess. It was awful. I had put it in a month early, and so somehow it really upset the apple cart, and I turned up there, things spilling out of my briefcase, and I just vowed to myself that I would never do that to myself again. And so I just got ready. I pulled my socks up and I turned up at that interview knowing that I'd done the very best preparation that I could. I had examples of all of my work, of all of my etchings, of the botanics, of my herbarium specimens, my fabric, my film, my songs. And where I was going and why I was doing it. And I couldn't have done more in my interview, and I was happy with that. If I didn't win it, I was happy, because I know that I put my best foot forward. The fact that I won it scared the pants off me again next time. It was like, whoa, okay, I've got to do this thing now. Holy moly. And you don't have in your application, like what I put in my itinerary, your itinerary is quite a specific guide for where you're planning to go, but you can't know that you're going to get accepted to those places or meet that person. You can't necessarily know that. You will provide a a fairly definitive guide of where you're proposing to go to and who you're proposing to meet, but you can't know that it's going to be exactly on that date or within this week. And so, you know, you don't need to panic that you have to have every single thing sorted, because there's a whole range of opportunities that will arise independently of what you organise yourself. Opportunities will arise and fabulous meetings will take place, and it may take your endeavour a bit sideways, and that's part of it. You know, that's part of the interest, and that's why it's necessary to give yourself a little flexibility.
And Deb, just adding to that, was good to hear you talk a lot about, you know, the meetings. What we don't want to see is people saying, oh, there's a really interesting conference here. Conferences kind of, they don't give you that one-on-one meeting and that kind of, you know, that's what we're looking for our fellows to do, rather than just attending a conference and networking. That might be part of it, but we really encourage people to think beyond that, because there are conferences on all sorts of things all over the world, and that will not help your application stand out.
No.
Yeah, and I applied to speak to the, you know, ex-director general of the IUCN, and he put me in touch with another person who said, oh, Deb, would you like to present an abstract for give a paper at this conference? And so I had no idea that was going to happen. And yes, I did. And each of those instances was, you know, another panic session. But after each instance, holy moly, I was confident that I could do the next one.
I think you raise a good point there, Deb, and we've got a few questions on there about interviews. So the interviews, they vary slightly state to state, but they run for about 15, 20 minutes. You speak a little bit about yourself and your project in most states, and then you'll be asked some questions. There is a panel there. They're all volunteers. They're experts in their field. And there is a lot of people in the room, but they're all very friendly, and they're there to get the most out of that process for you. And we're asked a few questions about the video pitch. Very straightforward. It's simply a minute for you to explain your project, and it's really useful because you filled out a form, but here you are just talking, and your passion can shine through.
Yeah, there's a lot of it is about you, how you conduct yourself. You know, what is that kernel of humanity that you're bringing and only you can bring? And I think the panel have a real sense of, you know, trying to winkle that out of you if it's a little bit subdued, and trying to find exactly who it is that they're going to be investing in. And yes, it is a big investment in you. And what will you be bringing back? How will you be able to disseminate your information back into Australia? Because, you know, that's what the Churchill Trust want. They want to, you know, enlargen the field of understanding and knowledge and practical expertise within the Australian community. And so how do you think you might do that? And you can give them a good idea, and you also may not quite know, because those opportunities will undoubtedly develop as you do your Churchill Fellowship. But they need to know that, you know, you've got the capacity within you to really bring it about.
We're also getting a couple of questions, sorry, Tom, about, you know, which stream should I apply in? Just apply. You know, the panels will do any sorting into, you know, broad topic areas. So don't get hung up on that label.
Sally, this next one might be one for you. We've got a couple of questions that relate to, again, the finance side of things, but there's a question around other arts funding bodies encouraging applicants to include an artist fee in the budget for something. So someone's asking what's the position on this. And then there's someone else who is self-employed, and the income earning potential during the fellowship travel would be affected. So they want to know some more information around whether that's around managing finances or there's any support for the lost opportunity. But can you talk to that kind of those aspects, please?
Sure. So the income while you're overseas is essentially, you can look at applying for dependence allowance. Again, it really comes down to your personal circumstances and like I said, the average fellowship for 6.6 weeks is just over 35,000. So it's a pretty good allowance. In terms of the other point you made there about fees for artists and things, we have had artists where we have supported some programs that they've attended. We had a pastry chef who spent his whole fellowship in Italy doing a course on pastry. So we can assist you with whatever your particular field may be.
Well, we can try to, certainly.
Yeah, well, we would aim to, yes.
Could I just say something that I think even in your application or prior to your application, it could be useful to send out feelers into any of the fields, any of the locations out there, people who are practicing what you're looking at studying, just to say, look, I'm thinking of applying. I'm applying for this. I wonder if I might get a letter of recommendation. You know, you could do prior homework as well. That could help give you the confidence, but could also show that you're where you're casting your net, and that, you know, that could be the initial start of that relationship that could burgeon into something more. So even for your own self, to start brokering those relationships, looking for future meetings, you know, looking for future collaborations, and, you know, say you wanted to do a play or something over in France, to start making those relationships. And that's what I found. I just found, actually, once I got over the terror of sending important looking emails to directors of corporations and institutions, actually, I got back some of the most humane replies going, oh, what a fascinating study you're doing. Yeah, we'd really love to meet you. And will you be in France on this day? And suddenly it was like I was talking to someone who was fresh flesh and blood, and it calmed me down at the same time as opening up these massive doors.
So,
Thank
Tom,
you. Go, Sally.
yeah. So how are we going with questions? I'm sort of conscious of time. Is there any of the sort of the main ones left? And I just mentioned here that for anyone who feels we haven't got to your question, you can contact us by phone or email, of course. But anyway, back to you, Tom.
Look, there's one that is a really great question that I think we'd love to get to while we have time. But Dan and Deb, someone's asked if you can both share, you know, relatively briefly, but your experience of the interview. Plenty of people have asked about the interview, understandably. So maybe Dan, can you kick off, and then Deb, what was the interview like? How long did it go for? What was it like?
I think the thing is, because especially in my practice, you know, I'm used to do interviews, so I was quite comfortable. But what I won't say I wasn't prepared for, but it was, I was told, you know, application was going to be the case. And that is that 15 minutes goes very, very quickly. And literally, because there's so many people who are wanting to be in the same position as you, and literally, as I think both of us have discussed, you know, make sure your project is clear, what you have. Like, I literally, yes, it came from lived experience, but it also came back from work that I have previously been doing. So I was actually able to incorporate that into, now I'm really being fair here, my pitch, you know. So I would say, literally, be clear what you are wanting to put forward. And literally, as I said, like, I was very fortunate that my project was accepted in the first time I applied. But I had people who I know who have received a Churchill Fellowship, and I would say, Liz, saying to me, don't be disheartened if you're not accepted the first time, because there is so many great applicants who are wanting to have this opportunity. So it was very important to me that literally, when I was caught in, because you have two, I think it's the same case now, Sally, you have two interviews if you get selected, and the second one, you go in more depth about what you're hoping to do. And I had reached out to people myself, people I already knew, and people who had been recommended to me, etc., people that I wanted to meet. I was already in contact with the head of Access International in London, and he was able to introduce me to people who could be interested, who I ended up meeting for the fellowship. And I would say literally, this is just for me. Try to not make it like, I know this sounds funny because it is a big deal at Churchill, but try to make it as relaxed as possible, both the interviews that you if you get caught up for an interview, and actually for the fellowship itself. Like one of the interviews that I did was actually, who's become a good friend of mine, was an artist, and that his interview, and it wasn't me, Paul Maselli, went for 3 hours, you know, and literally a lot of information that I hadn't thought about was brought back into hopefully my report. And it was very much like, how do we say this? I don't want to say I wanted it to be relaxed, but I did want to make it as literally, and I'm perhaps it is because my BA was in communications, so I had a little preempt knowledge of how to conduct interviews, etc. But literally find out, literally, to make it as relaxed as possible for them, so that I don't feel like, I won't say lounge show, but I can't think of a word. So if a person literally feels relaxed, you're going to get far more information out of them that you, which hopefully, or not hopefully, will obviously transfer to your report and obviously what you are trying to present post-Churchill.
Thanks, Dan. Deb?
Yeah, well, obviously don't turn up a month early in a hot mess of a sweat. Or do, because that was what I needed. I needed that to turn myself around and go, you've got this, you know your field, you know you're passionate. Now you just have to organize your ideas. And I made them into like 50-point font, highlighted, and brought in, you know, paper with dot points so that I could speak and then just look down and go, oh, this, don't want to forget that. I remember it going in a bit of a blur. I can't remember how long. I can't believe it was 15 minutes. It's probably more like half an hour or something. But I do remember putting out a lot of energy. I owned the show. And I think that's people they want to see who you are. They don't want you asking them questions. You're there to go, this is me. I know that I can do this. I'm excited. I'm going to go here, here, and here. I want to look at this, this, and this is why. And I can't wait. And I'm so thrilled to potentially have this opportunity. They want to know more about you as a human, that you have the commitment necessary to follow this through, and that you're not going to crack under pressure. I felt like I was under a lot of pressure, but I also actually just somehow let that go when I stepped in the door and went, do you love me now? You know I can do this. I'm fascinated at what I might find, and I really want to bring it home and get on with this under my belt. So I think really prepare yourself very well, but then walk in as if you're walking into a really friendly, supportive group of people who just want to know who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. So, you know, they're not so scary. And, you know, I'm sure that the Churchill Trust panel has changed quite a bit over the years, you know. I think there's been, not that I've experienced anything other than my own panel, but. Yeah.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Dan. That's a great note to end on. So yes, that brings us to the end of our session, and yeah, thank you, Deb and Dan, and thank you to Christine and Sally for sharing your time and your information. Once again, we will email out a recording of this to everyone who registered once the recording's ready. And if you have other questions, then please check the Churchill Trust website, which has got a whole lot of information there. There's also ways of contacting the Trust if you've got a specific question relating to your own situation. So yeah, hopefully we'll see lots of amazing applications from this group when applications open on the 28th of February. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.